There is an element on the periodic table that exists for less than 5 milliseconds before it completely falls apart. It has never been found in nature, no mineral contains it, no ore bears it. Not once in the entire history of this planet has it ever been encountered by accident. It serves almost no practical purpose whatsoever. And the person it was named after might just have been the most important scientist of the 20th century, and you've likely never heard of her. Her name was Lise Meitner, and this is her story. Hello and welcome to Meet the Elements, the series where I look at the stories of humanity through the lens of the periodic table. Today we're talking about meitnerium, an element named after the physicist who described how nuclear fission works, but was never properly recognized for her contributions. Lise Meitner was immensely influential to scientific history as a result of her work, and even though she was repeatedly nominated, she never won a Nobel Prize. But in the end, she was honored and recognized by having element 109 named after her. But before I dive into her story, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future episodes of Meet the Elements. And now that you've done that, let's take a look at what Lise Meitner actually did. Lise Meitner's early story is this. She was born in Vienna in 1878, she was fascinated by science from childhood, and she had to fight institutional barriers just to get into a room where she could actually work. Meitner was only the second woman to earn a doctorate from the University of Vienna. What matters for the story I want to tell begins in Berlin, where she ended up working in an old carpentry shop because German officials wouldn't give a woman a real lab. While in Berlin, Meitner began collaborating with a chemist named Otto Hahn. She was the physicist, he was the chemist. It was a great complementary pairing, and they would work together for much of the early 20th century. The pair's first real result was realizing a mistake a Polish chemist had made regarding element 91. This chemist thought it was incredibly short-lived, calling it brevium, but Meitner and Hahn found it could actually exist for hundreds of thousands of years. They renamed the element protactinium, and are now officially credited with actually discovering the element. For this result, Meitner was awarded the Leibniz Medal and was given her own section at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. And this is a good time to mention Meitner's loyalty to Hahn. It wasn't anything inappropriate, but Meitner admired Hahn professionally, likely because he had recognized her worth as a scientist and was willing to work with her in less than ideal conditions. And the pair published several papers regarding protactinium, but it's also worth noting that Meitner did all the final work for publications because Hahn was busy with work related to Germany's gas warfare during World War I. Even still, Meitner made sure Hahn received credit. Remember that. After the war, Meitner's scientific reputation continued to build. By the mid-1920s, she held a full professorship in physics, the first woman to do so at the University of Berlin. But of course, in the 1930s, everything changed in Germany. When Jewish scientists were run out of the country, Hahn resigned from his professorship, and while Meitner had converted to Christianity, she had been born Jewish. But given her Austrian heritage, and because she had actually earned her own lab, Meitner wanted to stay in Germany. During this time, Meitner focused her attention on the world of nuclear physics, particularly interested in the claims of Enrico Fermi, stating he had discovered the first transuranic elements through the bombardment of uranium atoms with atomic particles. Irene Joliot-Curie, Marie Curie's daughter, had conducted her own bombardments and reported that these new transuranic elements were uncannily similar to lanthanum, the first of the rare earths. But this didn't make any sense to Hahn, who swore to redo the experiment himself and prove that transuranics are nothing like lanthanum. But then in 1938, Germany annexed Austria. Meitner lost her Austrian citizenship and was suddenly just another Jewish scientist. She was forced to flee Germany after a colleague attempted to turn her in. She ended up in Sweden, working at one of the Nobel Science Institutes. But there was science that was still unresolved, and the result that would come out of it was about to become the most important discovery in physics in a generation. In December of 1938, Meitner received a letter from Hahn. He's still in Berlin, and the uranium bombardment results have continued to produce something that didn't make sense. One of the byproducts they kept finding was barium, element 56. Uranium is element 92. There isn't supposed to be an element that much lighter showing up in the results. The models they had at the time didn't back up what they were seeing. Meitner's nephew, physicist Otto Frisch, was visiting for Christmas, and so while on a walk in the snowy Swedish woods, Frisch on skis, Meitner keeping up on foot, the two of them sat on a log and talked through it. What Meitner worked out, performing calculations on scraps of paper, was that the uranium nucleus was, in fact, splitting in two. Together with Frisch, they calculated the energy the two new atoms gained from splitting, found the ever so slightly different total mass, and then calculated how much energy that difference in mass would produce. They found that the energy produced from the lost mass was the same as the energy the new atoms gained. Meitner and Frisch wrote it up immediately and submitted their findings. In that paper, Meitner named the process fission, a word coined by Lise Meitner given as the name for a process she was the first to describe, a discovery worthy of a Nobel Prize. The 1944 Nobel Prize in Chemistry was awarded to Otto Hahn for the discovery of nuclear fission. Lise Meitner's name was not on it. Neither was Hahn's laboratory partner, but at least he hadn't been the one to explain what they'd found. Meitner had. She gave them the framework, she named the phenomenon, and she was not there. So how did that happen? Well, it's kind of complicated. When Hahn published the full paper describing fission, he did so without including Meitner's name. This was due to the political landscape of the time. Having a Jewish author on a paper in Nazi Germany wasn't going to end well. There was also the matter of the war isolating Sweden from the world. The Nobel Committee had to largely rely on scientific journals, which would often arrive late if they arrived at all. And many of the prestigious German journals had barred Meitner. And when Hahn received word that he and he alone would be given the prize for fission, he didn't speak up about it. He didn't give Meitner the credit she rightfully deserved. And even when Meitner's contributions were made clear, the Nobel Institute never acknowledged their mistake. Even prominent scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project, which Meitner adamantly refused to work on, admitted how much they owed to her and her work. And despite being repeatedly nominated for a Nobel Prize her whole life, Lise Meitner died in 1968 without one. The epitaph on her grave, written by her nephew Otto Frisch, reads, "Lise Meitner, a physicist who never lost her humanity." But history has a funny way of keeping things in balance. Element 105 was originally named hahnium, after Otto Hahn, but a dispute over the naming rights stripped the element of that name, replacing it with dubnium. And because of the particular rules that exist for naming elements, each name only gets one shot. Hahnium can never be considered for an element name again. The Nobel Committee gave her nothing. But the same year hahnium was thrown out as the name for element 105, element 109 was named for Lise Meitner. Meitnerium. Atomic symbol MT. Every periodic table now carries her name, a far more exclusive honor than a Nobel Prize. And element 109 will forever be known as meitnerium. Thanks for watching, and thank you to this commenter suggesting I do meitnerium. I've been silently hoping I would get the suggestion from the start because this is a story that I've been wanting to tell. But let me know what you think. I definitely didn't tell the complete story of Lise Meitner's life, so leave a comment telling the parts of her story you love. And if you have one, leave a suggestion for the next element you want to see me cover. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next episode of Meet the Elements.